like snakes and spiders in my hair. This is Halloween, this is Halloween, 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 Halloween. In this town we call home, everyone will do the pumpkin song. In this town, won't we love it now? Everybody's waiting for the next surprise.
Hello everyone, and welcome to today's Code Along. My name is Reese, and I'll be your moderator today. Sorry, spooky moderator. We're going to kick off today's session in a couple of minutes. We're just waiting so everyone has a chance to join. In the meanwhile, though, we'd love to hear from you, so let us know where you're joining from using the chat or the comments, depending on what platform you're watching on. And yeah, tell us something that you'd like to get out of today's session. We are going to be using ChatGPT today, so if you don't have an account already, then sign up for one, and yeah, you'll be able to prompt along with us. We've got the QR code on screen now, so you can scan that to get the slides, so you can prompt along with us. I'll also be posting a link to that in the chat as well, so keep an eye out for that as well. Brilliant. I'll leave you with spooky vibes and be back to repeat these messages shortly for any new joiners. Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to the Spooky Code Along. Thank you for joining us. My name is Spooky Reese, and I'll be your moderator today. We're going to kick off today's session in a couple of minutes. We're just waiting so everyone has a chance to join. In the meanwhile, though, we'd love to know what Halloween costume you dressed up as this year, or you plan to dress up as tonight. If you've got a party coming up, then yeah, let us know what your spooky costume ideas are. And if you've got any spooky data stories or any creepy spooky data stories, then let us know in the chat as well. I'll be posting a link so you can prompt along with us for today's session in the chat, but you can also get it on screen as well. I've posted it already, so go find it, or I will be posting it again for anyone that's missed it. Sorry I can't watch, it's too scary. True, very scary. Brilliant. I'll be back in a second to repeat these messages for anyone new that's joining, but until then, enjoy the background music, and don't forget to have a OpenAI ChatGPT account so that you can prompt along with us. Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to the Spooky Code Along. My name is Spooky Reese, and I'll be your moderator today. We're going to kick off today's session in about 10 or 15 seconds or so. We're just waiting for the last few people to arrive here. Let us know which spooky outfit you decided to go for this Halloween, and yeah, you've obviously seen which one mine is. So brilliant. One note for today's Code Along: you will need an OpenAI account so that you can prompt along with us on ChatGPT. I'll be posting a link so you can code along with us, prompt along with us, but you can also get it from the QR code on screen. Brilliant. I think that's everything from me, so now I'll hand you over to your spooky host, Adele. Adele, please take it away.
All right. Thank you so much, Reese. So my costume is not as crazy as Reese's. I just have a wizard hat, given that ChatGPT makes me feel like a wizard. Thank you all so much for joining us today, especially on Halloween. As you've seen, we have something themed up for you today. I see people joining us from all over the world. Let us know, everyone, where you're joining from. It's great to see you all. We have Hadi from Canada. Great to see you. We have Paul from He's based in Thailand, but he's from Chile. Great to see you. Dave is from California. We have LinkedIn user from Nairobi, Kenya. Ermak from Turkey. Um, yes, adult Gandalf, indeed. I am wizarding today. We have Edmond from Lebanon. Marhaba, Edmond. It's great to see you. Alex Rehor, loving it. It's great to see you again, Alex. All from Argentina. We have Gwendal from France. Bonjour. Um, Arif from Qatar. Marhaba, Arif. Yeah, people from all over the world. It's great to see, as always. The amount of people flocking in from all over the world, from every continent. It's really makes it all worth it. Um, yeah, as Reese put it in, Adele level 9 wizard at Datacamp. Cool. So what we're going to talk about today is ChatGPT prompt engineering for beginners. And what that means is that we're going to be actually walking you through on ChatGPT. We're going to be prompting along together, showing you some of the use cases I use ChatGPT for, but also some other use cases that could be useful. Now, note as well, tomorrow we have an advanced ChatGPT prompt engineering session, and the day after we have a ChatGPT session focused only on the data analysis use case there. So let's get started. As we said at the beginning, my name is Adele, data science evangelist at DataCamp. Now that's been covered. Let's talk about what we're going to be discussing today. So we're going to talking about a bit about ChatGPT, mainly what is ChatGPT and why is it so good. I think a lot of people here are aware of ChatGPT, but maybe not a lot of folks are aware of what makes it so effective. Second thing, we're going to talk about ChatGPT prompt engineering, right? So why do we want to invest in prompt engineering as a skill set? What is prompt engineering? And can talk about the importance of a human in the loop, right? As well as go into the chat GPT prompt formula. So Victor here is sharing when will the chat GPT session on data analysis be? How can we participate? Just go to www.datacamp.com/webinars and check out our webinars, and you will see it on Thursday. It's this Thursday with Richie. And finally, what we're going to talk about is specific use cases for GPT-4 and multimodality. So we're going to go into image data. We're going to go to showcase the plugins and a lot of that. So with that, let's get started. As Reese said, to prompt along and to kind of use ChatGPT alongside with us, make sure to go to chat.openai.com, sign up or sign in, depending if you have an account or not. We will be using GPT-4, which requires a paid subscription throughout the code along, but all of the use cases that we will be using today, except the final section where we show some image data, can be used with GPT 3.5, which you can access for free on the chat.openai.com. You can always prompt along with us if you do not have access to GPT-4 or GPT Plus subscription. What is ChatGPT and why now? Why this year have we seen this explosion of this use case of large language models being very effective at what they do? So let's get started. If you look at ChatGPT and had took the world by storm, I think this is pretty outdated at the moment. Like this is 2 months after the release of ChatGPT, I think. It took 2 months for ChatGPT to reach 100 million users globally, right? One of the fastest growing apps on the planet. I think it was beaten since then, since this image was released, by Threads, if I'm not mistaken. I think it took Threads like 4 weeks or something. But granted, Threads has already a pre-established user base in Instagram. So, Instagram users were being pushed to sign up on Threads. Whereas here, this is a completely new application, right, that caught wildfire. And, it's really one of the kind of the application that put highly sophisticated AI in the hands of the masses, and really put AI on the map, democratized AI in a lot of ways. And what's the driver behind this explosion in generative AI tooling? In a lot of ways, large language models, since the inception of the transformer model in 2017, have been getting better, have been getting bigger, right? Up until just last year, this year with the release of GPT-4. GPT-4, we don't know what the actual size of the model is. It's actually theorized that it's actually multiple models that are packaged into one, that are specialized in different verticals. But that's there's no necessarily open research on that. But GPT-3 had 175 billion parameters. And parameters is essentially a proxy for the size of the model and the amount of data it's been trained on. And essentially, yeah, large language models have been becoming bigger and becoming better, and that's kind of the algorithmic innovation that we've seen here since 2017. It's just that the underlying algorithms for these models have been becoming better. Now, another reason why ChatGPT is so effective and why it took the world by storm is a secret sauce called reinforcement learning from human feedback, which really encapsulates in the title of this technique, which in a nutshell lets folks who train large language models, who train the models like ChatGPT, to steer the output of the underlying model by providing human feedback to the output. So in a nutshell, a human labeler ranks the outputs for a specific question or input, from best to worst, right? And then this data is used to retrain and reward the model. Okay, the human labeler said this particular output for this response is much more preferred, right? And then you optimize the model based on this training mechanism. So actually, OpenAI has a large team of human labelers who are going into the outputs of ChatGPT and ranking the outputs by preferred to less preferred to retrain the model on this type of data. So reinforcement learning from human feedback has been actually instrumental in making sure that that the outputs of ChatGPT have a high signal to noise ratio, that they're highly qualitative most of the time. Now, the third thing, which I think is one of the main reasons why ChatGPT has been so successful, which is the interface. Actually, ChatGPT at the end of the day is a product. It's an AI product, and what makes digital products very successful, outside of the intrinsic value they provide, it's the user experience and the user interface. Being able to open up my application, my ChatGPT application on my phone, and essentially just chatting with ChatGPT and getting answers quickly is actually super useful. And this really democratized this interface, the chat interface, really democratized AI in the hands of the masses. So now that we've talked about why ChatGPT has become so successful, why it's grown, why it's scaled, why it has, what's the secret sauce behind the effectiveness of ChatGPT, let's talk about prompt engineering, and which is really the meat of today's session. So what we're going to talk about today is the ChatGPT prompt formula, right? And what prompt engineering is essentially is, improving the input that you provide to ChatGPT to improve the likelihood of a good answer based on your request, right? And really, the reason why is that the mental model for interacting with AI models that you should have is that of an editor. So here we have a GIF of the editor in chief at the Daily Bugle from Spider-Man, J. Jonah Jameson. And really, you should behave in the same way an editor behaves with any large language model or AI model. Do not take output as ground truth. Always be the editor of the model's output. And prompt engineering, what it allows you to do is steer the input, optimize the input so that the output is also more effective here. So let's go into the ChatGPT prompt formula. And we'll walk you through it bit by bit here and make sure that we go through it in a lot more detail, right? But the ChatGPT formula in a nutshell goes like this. I want you to act as X. We're going to deep dive into all of these different formulas, all of these variables that you see. What is X? What is task description? You are performing task description, so the tasks that we are discussing here. We provide ChatGPT a system level strict boundary setting, right? I'll go deep into details on that. We need to focus on chain of thought prompting, right? Kind of give ChatGPT the ability to think through its answers. We give different requirements that are task specific, right? And then we provide task level boundary settings and more context. So, what does this mean? This looks a bit too complicated for a ChatGPT prompt, right? However, it's going to be much easier once we see it illustrated in action. So, let's take an example task, right? This is actually something that we use ChatGPT for in our team here when we create webinars, which is creating a webinar landing page, right? So here we're going to take an example of a webinar discussing generative AI applications in enterprise organizations, right? So this is a webinar on this particular topic of how to use generative AI in enterprise organizations. Now, a lot of you probably have signed up using this page for this particular webinar, right? ChatGPT prompt engineering for beginners, right? And you have here the title of the webinar, the code along, the takeaways, three main summaries, kind of takeaways for this particular session, an abstract, right? Why you need to sign up for this session, what's going to be covered in it, etc., etc. And what we're going to be using now is ChatGPT to create a similar webinar landing page. To get it to a state where it can be edited by a human and made sure that it's high quality enough, right? So again, if you want to prompt along, all you need to do is go to chat.openai.com. Even if if you're using your phone and if you want to use the ChatGPT mobile app, you can download it. It's for free. And just as a caveat, we will be using GPT-4 throughout the code along, but feel free to use GPT 3.5, which is the free version that you get without having to buy ChatGPT Plus. So I have here ChatGPT open, right? So I'll be switching back and forth between this slide and ChatGPT. Okay, so the first thing that we wanted to kind of in the prompt formula is act as X, right? And what act as X does, it helps ChatGPT understand which persona it's trying to emulate, right? This is highly task dependent, right? So here, for example, the task is becoming a data science webinar moderator, right? You need to act as a data science webinar moderator. But if you're doing a data science task, like performing data analysis on a data set, act as a data scientist. If it's writing a social media copy post, act as a social media copywriter, right? So the act as X essentially helps ChatGPT understand which persona it needs to take on, right? And probably what's happening in the back of the on the background with the model here is that it's referencing a lot of the data that's been created by these types of personas, right? So I want you to act as an expert data science webinar moderator. So this is my first description, right? My first kind of variable. And the second variable is the task description, right? So this is also highly task dependent. It's really essentially what you want ChatGPT to do, right? So here we provide a detailed yet concise instructions for ChatGPT on what it's actually doing, right? So you are an expert webinar moderator on topics related to artificial intelligence, data science, and upskilling. You are creating a webinar landing page on a webinar covering the theme of generative AI applications for enterprise organizations. So here we gave it the persona description. I want you to act as a data science webinar moderator, and we gave it the task, right? Now, the third formula that we discussed here, the third element, is a system level boundary. Sometimes it's much better to tell a system what not to do versus what to do in a certain circumstance, right? And really, usually a great system level boundary is to make sure that it listens to your feedback very closely, is follow my instructions and follow them very carefully. Do not deviate away from my instructions. And essentially what this helps here to do is ground ChatGPT's responses into responses that follow the instructions as close as possible, right? So this is may not be very useful for a task like create a webinar landing page title, but it's actually very useful if you're doing a large scale data analysis on a data set, or if you're asking it to create code and you want it to execute it in a specific way, right? So this system level boundary is also very useful here. Now, this is a big one, chain of thought prompting, right? And here you can see chain of thought prompting is provide a step-by-step reasoning of why you're making the decisions you are making, Okay. And what chain of thought prompting refers to here is asking ChatGPT to provide reasoning for what it's making, for the decisions that it's making. And it's a really fascinating aspect of generative AI, because when prompted to think step by step about its answer, it's almost guaranteed to provide better results, right? And we'll showcase it now with an example, which is arithmetic. Arithmetic for any generative AI model is actually a great uh, kind of test to see its reasoning abilities, because generative AI at the end of the day, or large language models, are models that are trained on a lot of text data that provide the most highly statistically relevant answer given the input that they provide. And if they are able to perform arithmetic abilities, right, then there is some emergent logical abilities that you can see here. At least that's the rationale behind using arithmetic as a testing function. So I'll give you an example here. So by putting this query of 2 times 3 divided by 7 times 42.5 times 0.01 times 1.53 times 2.11 divided by 2.56 times 0.45, the answer is 0.206. Okay. So I'm going to copy paste this query here, and I'm going to ask it to, what is 2 point times 3, et cetera, et cetera. Only provide the answer. Do not say another word. So I'm actually doing the opposite of chain of thought prompting here. I'm only asking for the answer. So I'm going to press here. So it's actually 0.47. So completely wrong, right? So, oops. So if I go here, completely wrong. The actual answer is 0.206, right? Now let's try another prompt. What is 2 times, etc., etc., etc.? Please provide step-by-step calculations until you reach the final results and provide a reasoning for each step. Make sure your answers are concise. So here, I'm going to open a new chat just so it doesn't have any memory of what I asked. We can see here. Yeah, Victor J has said 2.39. Now, Victor, try it out by asking this prompt with provide step-by-step calculations, etc. It may still be the wrong answer, but it will be closer to the original answer. So here you see step 1, I calculate 2 times 3, it's 6. Then I apply 6 divided by 7, etc., etc. And you reach the final results, which is 0.206700803, which is slightly off at the latter part, but we did get the first 4 digits correct, right? So just by using chain of thought prompting here, we've been able to accelerate or to improve the quality of the results given the same model. There's no plugins, there's no additional inputs. So just by using the input here, we've been able to improve the quality of the calculations made by GPT-4 here. So again, if you want to check it out on your ChatGPT instance, just input the what is 2 times 3, etc. Then please provide step-by-step calculations until you reach the final steps. So chain of thought prompting is actually like an element to your prompt that will take any output from ChatGPT to the next level in almost any circumstance. So here, provide a step-by-step reasoning of why you're making the decisions that you are making, and that's about it. Now, the second thing here are requirements, right? So these are sub prompts, right? That are very task specific, right? So if you look at the description, for example, you provide the task description. You provide an overview of like what the task at hand. But I want to provide ChatGPT a very specific set of descriptions. I want the title. I want the abstract, etc., etc. So here what I ask it, write an engaging professional title for the webinar. The primary audiences are data leaders, practitioners, and enthusiasts. Write a 100 and 150 word abstract for the webinar. The abstract should be 2 paragraphs. The first paragraph introduces why the topic is important. The second paragraph provides an overview of what will be covered in the webinar. 4, provide 3 key takeaways for the webinar for audiences to remember. So far we have the title, the abstract, and the 3 takeaways. And the 5th one, which is a tone and voice, we care about our tone and voice quite a bit. Have a credible, professional, and accessible voice and tone. A good example would be that of DataCamp, McKinsey, or other reputable organizations. So this is so it can pull different types of examples from its training data. Now, the last one is task level strict boundary setting, right? So this is, we saw how do not deviate away from my instructions, follow them very carefully. Here, what we provide is 2 additional boundary settings that are really specific to the task at hand. Avoid bad copy, avoid inaccuracies, right? So this will help it as well ground its outputs and something a bit more qualitative and something that has a bit more higher accuracy here as well. So let's try it out in ChatGPT. I'm going to copy paste this particular prompt. I'm going to open a new chat. So here, I'm on the default. And I'm going to write it up. So step-by-step reasoning, understanding the audience. The primary audiences are data leaders, practitioners, enthusiasts. This means the language and tone should be professional, technical enough to engage the well-informed, yet accessible for those who are enthusiasts. Correct. The title should be catchy yet clear, given the audience it can convey the value of the topic and pique their interest, avoiding buzzwords or overly complex kind of language. Okay. The 2-paragraph format is adhered to. Okay. The first highlights the significance, setting the context. The second gives a brief overview, offering a snapshot of the content. These should be direct, insightful, and promise actionable value. So, title: Generative AI in the Enterprise, Unlocking New Frontiers in Business Innovations. That's a bit buzzwordy. That's where I would come in and update the title. So, the rapid evolution of our AI has ushered in an era of transformative change, and among the most groundbreaking of these technologies is generative AI. For enterprises, the potential of generative AI models is vast, spanning from automating design processes to pioneering new products. It's imperative for data leaders to comprehend and harness this potential to maintain a competitive edge. This webinar delves into the myriad of applications of generative AI in enterprise settings. Attendees will be able to take in a journey from understanding the foundational concepts to exploring real-world cases where businesses have leveraged these models for innovation, et cetera, et cetera. And then 3 key takeaways here, right? So here it gave me a note as well. So appreciate the note. And essentially, this is a great first draft for a webinar on this particular topic. Now, of course, given that I would be working on the content, intimately aware of what to particularly focus on in the key takeaways, what to cover in the content, how to update the title, and yeah, that's essentially where it would be useful. Now, I'm getting a couple of questions here on the arithmetic side. So this is from Ermac. How can we proceed with the hard math questions to get the correct answers, especially if it cannot solve operation-related problems, for example, probability and statistics? Now, we're going to cover this, but Alex Rehor also jumped in and gave here a good example. In GPT-4, you have the Wolfram Alpha plugin. So we're going to see how plugins improve the capabilities of ChatGPT. But to answer one question here that I think kind of ties it all together, how can it get the arithmetic incorrectly? Why is it not precise? Because ultimately, ChatGPT, right, is trying to build a world model. At least that's my hypothesis. Large language models are trying to build a world model based on the data that they've been trained on, and some of that data has arithmetic, right? And it has captured to some degree the rules of arithmetic, but not to a perfect degree, right? I would be very keen to see if you train a large language model purely only on arithmetic data, operations, et cetera, how it would perform compared to ChatGPT, for example, right? But ultimately, this is the arithmetic problem signals or showcases one of the weaknesses of large language models is that they're essentially not logic machines. They are statistical likelihood machines. They are inputs. They are models that try to output statistically likely outputs given the input. So with that said, let's jump in to one additional thing here, which is more context. So we saw, in our example of I want you to act as a data science webinar moderator. You are performing, you are creating a landing page, et cetera, et cetera. Listen to my instructions, listen to them very carefully here on system level boundary setting, chain of thought prompting of, I want you to provide a step-by-step reasoning for what you're thinking. Some people even use the take a deep breath chain of thought prompt, which actually also works. So if you tell ChatGPT, take a deep breath, it will provide a better answers than nothing. Requirements for the task level, strict boundary here, and then more context. So more context is, if you want to provide additional context, like, for example, the questions or the content I'm planning to present in the webinar so that I can create an effective landing page. That would be, for example, what to do here. So a word of caution, though. I showed here the use case of creating a webinar landing page, right? It's important to note that the webinar landing pages are reviewed by my team, or we review them at every single juncture, right? It's really important to have a human in the loop. You cannot have complete unsupervision of generative AI models. Sometimes it may work out, but a lot of times you will end up with errors and inaccuracies that will require a human in the loop. Now, I see quite a few questions, so I think this is a great time to answer some questions here. I already covered the math questions. Here, DALL-E, that's a good question. Is there any case of over prompting that will lead to more hallucinations? I think it depends on the use case, that you could have a situation where you are over prompting, where I wouldn't say that it will lead to hallucinations, but what you will have is like low quality output, right? This is especially for image generation that I found, like where over prompting actually complicates the output. And we'll look at image generation at a later point in time in the session now. Also getting one question here. That's a good question as well. What if you ask once the wrong answer is given to explain how it got to that result? That's actually an interesting use case. Let's try it out. I think sometimes ChatGPT will actually. So can you explain? ChatGPT will realize it made a mistake, and then it will tell you, "Oh, I'm very sorry, I made a mistake." So you'll see here. My previous answer seems to be incorrect, and I apologize for the oversight. So when we asked it post prompt to showcase to explain its reasoning, which is essentially chain of thought prompting, it arrived at the correct output. So question here from Irfan, is it possible to ask it to train something? So if I'm interpreting your question correctly, you'd like to kind of fine tune ChatGPT, that will require using the OpenAI API rather than train it directly on the ChatGPT interface. Okay, so we'll cover more questions later time. I see some are still flowing, but I want to make sure that we cover the remaining sections here. Now, I want to showcase other examples of ChatGPT in action of the formula that we discussed. So, for example, for marketing workflows, right? We just saw, right, how we created a webinar landing page. Now, in my previous example, when I was trying out in preparation for this webinar, when we were trying out the prompt, it gave me a webinar titled Generative AI Applications for Enterprise Organizations, Unlocking the Power of Creative Automation. So what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to go back to the title that it gave me, which is here. I'm going to paste it. Okay. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a social media post, a LinkedIn post to advertise this webinar. So act as a social media copywriter. So this is my act as X. Create a LinkedIn post this about a webinar titled Generative AI in the Enterprise, et cetera, et cetera. The system level boundary, follow my instructions and follow them very carefully. Do not deviate away from the instructions. Then provide a step-by-step reasoning of why you're making the decisions you are making. So this is chain of thought prompting. And then task descriptions here. Write an engaging professional LinkedIn post. Make your LinkedIn post about 800 characters long. Use small paragraphs. Add lists and line breaks, a small amount of emojis to make the post easier to read. Have a credible, professional, accessible voice and tone. A good example would be that of DataCamp, McKinsey, and other reputable organizations. Avoid bad copy and avoid inaccuracies. So let's see what we do here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to post it in the same thread here, just so it can have memory as well. Okay, so it's explaining here its rationale. LinkedIn post. Exciting news. I wouldn't start a LinkedIn post right that. So here it's a bit slow. So here, I think what it's doing is that it's over-indexing on the use small paragraph, add lists, etc. Right? So it's really trying to break up the content as much as possible. Okay, so what I would use here is this, for example, right? Maybe this and this, but then I would change the intro, right? And this really showcases the example of how you should be thinking about generative AI and using generative AI in the workplace. It's not a solution. It's not an automation tool. It's an augmentation. It helps you get started more quickly. Now, another similar example is actually writing ad copy, right? So, if you are someone who works in paid advertising, where run paid ads using tools like LinkedIn or Facebook or Google, etc. What you need to do is create a lot of variations of the same ad to see which one is higher performing, etc. And I think this is like using something like generative AI is actually very useful for this use case. So what we're going to showcase here is an example of using ChatGPT to create LinkedIn paid posts, right? To drive registrations for this particular webinar that we're talking about. So create LinkedIn paid ads about a webinar called Generative AI. So I'm going to change the webinar title. Okay. Follow my instructions, follow them very carefully. Write an engaging LinkedIn ad. Make your LinkedIn post. From my understanding, it's 120 characters limit. Okay. And then add it here. Okay. Succinct, impactful. Cool. Discover generative AI's powers for business. Join our must-see webinar now. Lead in business with generative AI insights. Secure webinar C. Unleash AI's next frontier and dive into our webinar. I actually preferred this one because it was most straight to the point. But these two can be worked upon, right? And then if you ask it for more variations and more updates, etc., this is where the magic happens and being able to produce a lot of these ads pretty quickly. Now, let's go through as well common ChatGPT prompts, especially for sales, customer service workflows, because I think this is where they're super useful. Now, again, as I said, tomorrow we have an advanced prompt engineering code along as well with Isabella Boudet, who's going to be going a bit more deeper into these types of use cases. But Thursday, Richie will actually be using ChatGPT's data analysis tool, or formerly known as Code Interpreter, to perform an A to Z data analysis there. Now, email generator, right? So one here, I think this is a very common use case to generate a cold email using ChatGPT. That says use this. Use this as a co-writer, not as a spam machine, right? Um, it's very important to be able to use this to improve the quality of your thoughtful emails, not to scale unthoughtful emails. So here, act as a salesperson, create a cold email to a prospect discussing the service that they might be interested in and how it can be useful for their organizations. Follow my instructions and follow them very carefully. Do not deviate away from my instructions, right? So again, we do chain of thought prompting, provide a step-by-step reasoning for why you're making the decisions that you're making. Make sure that the email is professional, personable, concise, and useful. Make sure to speak to their pain point, as what their title is. The prospect usually has X pain point. Avoid bad copy. Be respectful of their time. Do not add any useless details about how you prepared for writing this email. Avoid inaccuracies. Make sure the email is at most 100 words long. So I'm going to give one example here, right? We're using this tool called Restream, live streaming, right? For live streaming this code along. Let's assume that I am a salesperson at Restream and I am trying to sell to me Restream, and why would we not want to buy it? So, create a cold email to a prospect discussing Restream, the live streaming service. So here it's the same. Make sure to speak to their pain point. As a data science evangelist, the prospect usually has a need to always create the best possible experience for their audience. Avoid bad copy, etc., etc. So let's copy paste this. I'm going to put it in a new chat. So here, being concise. Okay. Hope you're well. I wanted to introduce Restream, a live streaming service tailored to enhance audience engagement. I recognize the importance of offering a seamless experience to your followers. With Restream, you can seamlessly this could be instrumental for your webinars, live data presentations, and more. Would you be able to brief call to This is actually a straight to the point, concise, high quality email that I can update if I was a salesperson for Restream here. And I'm giving Restream free advertising here, but yeah. Now another example, right? Now I'm gonna go to them in a bit more detail. I'm not gonna go into more detail because we have 20 minutes left. I want to make sure that we cover the GPT-4 capabilities as well. One of them is a contract reviewer, for example, right? Act as a lawyer, explain the following legal language to me, follow my instructions and follow them very carefully. Provide a step-by-step reasoning of why you're making the decisions you are making. Explain the legal language to me as a layman. I am not a lawyer. Avoid inaccuracies. And this is where it's really important to leverage both generative AI tools, but also to apply your own critical thinking as you read the explanations of ChatGPT here, right? So I'm going to copy paste this and showcase it in action. So step-by-step initial understanding. The clause appears to pertain to the rights and obligations of a buyer in the context of inspecting and potentially rejecting delivered goods. It establishes a time frame for these actions. So here, what's nice about the chain of thought prompting is that actually it breaks it down almost sentence by sentence what it means, right? So this helps avoid inaccuracies in this situation. That said as well, definitely like complex legal language should always be reviewed by legal professionals. Now, one thing that you can check out in your own free time, right, before we jump onto the GPT-4 capabilities, is customer support, for example, solutions, right? So this is a template prompt for customer support, right? And here we provide an example of, webinar recordings. A lot of you ask always about webinar recordings or code along recordings. Will there be a webinar recording available, right? So here we leverage ChatGPT for these particular use cases. Now, Q&A, as we make sure to, send us as many questions that you have. I'm reviewing that at the moment. Da, 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 da. Okay, quite a few questions. So here, Arif, why does it always give an answer saying, as far as my knowledge, up to 2021 or something? So, it's because ChatGPT was trained on a data set that stopped temporally on September 2021. That said, I think they actually updated it a couple of days ago. So if I ask it, what is your cutoff point for your training data? January 2022, and for some people it became April 2023. So here, another question. Do you have any tips or plugins on how to search and organize your chats? So unfortunately, the search on ChatGPT is not very effective. I'm not sure if there are any outside plugins that let you have a more effective search. You can use other tools that use GPT-4 on top. Like for example, Perplexity.ai essentially has the same level of performance as ChatGPT because it uses the same model, but it has a much better user experience, in my opinion. Another good question here by Ermac. Is it too general question? But also sometimes when I say to ChatGPT that you are wrong and it's giving me either the same answers, and sometimes how can we avoid this cycle? That's a good question. Sometimes that there are certain level of questions where it really is not effective at finding the answer. Then what you need to do is probably redesign the original prompt, right? Or redesign the original prompt, or not use AI in that particular circumstance. Another question here: how can I use ChatGPT for programming of specific languages? So we're going to check it out in the data analysis tool Thursday for Python, but you can also directly prompt ChatGPT. I'm using Kotlin, Python, R, SQL, etc. I have this problem. Help me solve it. Oh, this is a good question. GPT usually doesn't respond to publicly available web scraping tasks. Are there specific prompts for getting precise answers for market research tasks? So I don't want to spoil Thursday's session, but I think Thursday Richie will be doing some basic web scraping. That said, what I found to be very effective for web scraping is that maybe ChatGPT will not be able to get you the results. You will need to do them in DataCamp Workspace or your IDE, etc. But it can effectively create beautiful soup scrapers for a particular site. So let's do a very simple example here. What's an easy site to scrape? Let's go to Towards Data Science. Actually, I'm a fan of Towards Data Science. Oops. Let's try to see something that is not. So what you need to do here is provide it the URL, right? And then you inspect on your browser, right? So let's say I want to just scrape this section, right? Act as a web scraping expert. Below you will find HTML code from a Towards Data Science article. Please help me scrape it. Follow my instructions. Follow them very carefully. So one, explain your steps step by step. Below is an HTML code for an article. Scrape the section I provided using beautiful soup and requests. So for those who are not aware, beautiful soup and requests are Python packages that you can use to scrape. The URL of the article is so here I'm gonna oops copy element. So here, yeah. And what it will do essentially is create a function that will help you scrape this. Now you can test this out in your own time because we won't be able to have time, but hopefully Richie will be able to cover this on Thursday. So here you'll see it implements the function. Yeah. Another question. Can I use the ChatGPT API locally on data I have saved on my local computer, actually? Um, so you can use the API, but you can also use the advanced data analysis functionality, which we'll cover Thursday. So yeah, Richie is actually watching the code along. Hello, Richie. We'll cover web scraping on Thursday. Yes, indeed. And in fact, if you have ChatGPT Plus, so here they're asking if you'll be able to search updated information by removing cutoff points, is that you'll be able to browse the internet with Bing using ChatGPT. But I have to say, it's not very effective. So let's jump in on the next set of questions because now we're going to focus on multimodality and GPT-4 specific use cases, right? So if you go on GPT-4 here, right, you'll be able to see, especially if you have access to ChatGPT Plus, you'll be able to see default, browse with Bing, advanced data analysis, plugins, DALL-E 3, right? And there's also, in the regular chat like GPT-4, you'll be able to see here this image. You'll be able to attach images to GPT, and it can explain you these images, and that's called GPT-4 Vision. Now, what we're going to cover today, right, is plugins, DALL-E 3, and GPT-4 Vision, right? So advanced data analysis, that is Thursday's code along. So make sure to sign up for that one. And what I want to focus on is first plugins, right? Because we saw this example, right, of what is 2 times 3 times 7, 40 times, right? And it gave us wrong answers, right, on regular ChatGPT. Now, what plugins do is if you go here, they let you extend the capabilities of ChatGPT depending on the tool or the app that you want to use. So I don't have any plugins installed here. And there's many, many plugins. So for example, AI with PDF lets you interact and chat with PDFs. Ask Code, you can provide a GitHub repository URL, and you can ask it questions about your code. Now, one very popular plugin, which Alex Rehor mentioned earlier, is Wolfram Alpha. Now, Wolfram Alpha essentially provides you the ability to do computation, math, right, using the Alpha Wolfram language, right? So essentially, I'm going to choose here this plugin, the Wolfram plugin, and I'm going to do here. I'm not going to even say anything. What is 2 times 3 times, etc., times, etc., etc.? So here should give me a using the Wolfram seems to be bugging. So I'm gonna refresh it just in case it was bugging. Wow, seems we're running into a ChatGPT bug. Okay, so Wolfram Alpha is turned on. And then what is 2 times 3 times, etc.? I think it should be working now. Okay, using Wolfram. So it knows automatically which plugin to use. And it gave me a very solid answer and also gave me a visualization of where it is. So that's another great example of plugins. Now, of course, there's many plugins online. You can have a kayak plugin, for example, to book your flights, an Expedia plugin, for example, to book your hotels. Right? There's many different ways that you can use plugins, and I highly recommend that you check out the plugin store if you have ChatGPT Plus. Now, the other thing I want to mention here is DALL-E 3. Now, DALL-E 3, for those who are not aware, it's the image generator that OpenAI has developed. Usually it was a standalone service, but now it's part of GPT-4 or ChatGPT Plus. And what is going to be interesting here as well is not to just create images, but to actually see the interaction between using tools like ChatGPT and DALL-E 3 in the same workflow to a certain extent. Now let's talk about the prompt formula for image generators, right? There's definitely more complex prompt formulas out there. This is, I'll let you read this article that kind of I got this formula from, right? And essentially what it tries to do is that it defines a prefix, a scene, and a suffix. The prefix defines the medium, the style, right? Think, for example, studio photography, absurdist oil painting, Pixar movie, right? The scene is what are you trying to create? For example, an astronaut on a horse. The suffix is kind of updates on the prefix and gives it more of a distinct flavor, right? So eerie vibe, colorful, etc. So what we're gonna do today is an animated still. We're gonna visualize right now using DALL-E 3, an animated still in the style of Pixar movies of a group of AI enthusiasts from different backgrounds and cultures learning how to use ChatGPT and its colorful vibes. So here we have DALL-E 3, we've selected it. That tells you creating images using DALL-E 3. Okay. So ChatGPT first here. Well, actually, it captures ChatGPT pretty effectively here. Now, the only thing is that it's actually not very much so in the style of Pixar films. Maybe here a bit, it's more in the style of Pixar films. But I would probably update it maybe to like a CGI still in the style on the of the Pixar movies. Interestingly, here you see like the logo of Reddit to a certain extent. I think that's pretty wild. Yeah. Now the workflow though here that's interesting is that once you start combining like image generators with ChatGPT, so we have here this particular prefix, scene, suffix, etc. Right? And what I want to use is to create a storyboard using ChatGPT and DALL-E 3. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create this prompt and put it in ChatGPT. So based on the prompt, this prompt framework for DALL-E 3, prefix, scene, suffix, where this is the prefix, this is the scene, this is the suffix, can you create a series of prompts to illustrate the storyboard for a Pixar movies about AI enthusiasts from different backgrounds learning AI? The prefix needs to be always an animated still in the style of Pixar movies. The suffix needs to be colorful vibes. I would put the title of the image in the storyboard and its prompt only. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open a chat. I'm going to go to the default, GPT-4. I'm going to type this. So the Dreamy University campus, then diverse introduction, then first attempt with AI, then a mishap in the lab. So you can see here that there's a kind of a story being, right? Late night studying, the AI fair. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do the first three or first four. So here what I'm gonna do, I am creating a storyboard for a Pixar film about a group of diverse students learning AI. Below, you'll find for each image prompt. So here I'm going to just make it a bit more easier to understand. So 1 and 2, 3. So what I've done here, just to illustrate what I've done, I created this initial prompt, and then I numbered each element of the storyboard. So let's see how it does here. Because, okay. So let's see how it performs. So we have 4 images here to generate. So it's going to be a bit of time. In the meantime, I'm going to take some questions. Oh, we have our first image. Okay, so this is the first image. This is the second image. This is a bit of a weird one. So here actually we're seeing the limitations maybe. And this is where we need to rethink the prompt, right, of animated style in the Pixar movies. So question here from Katao, do you think that ChatGPT will be able to search updated information by removing cutoff point, just as you explained as of September 2021? Yeah, here with, as I mentioned, with the browser integration, it actually becomes more effective at that. And then here, I had the problem that it sometimes create abstract text and placed it in images, thinking of business terms for certain prompts. How can you avoid this? Especially for image generation, the abstract text problem has not been yet solved. And then third and fourth. So I think where it definitely fell off the track is the style here, and this is where we need to revisit that prompt and make sure that it's high quality. Now that said, one final thing I wanted to show you here is GPT-4V, which is ChatGPT-4, like GPT-4 Vision. And what this allows you to do is ask questions about images. And a great use case of that is charts, right? So here we have a chart showing Nobel Prize winners by age when winning papers is published for 2 fields, economics and physics, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open a new chat. I'm going to put it as default, and I have here the image file, and I have the same picture here, and I'm going to upload it. And I'm going to ask it, can you please interpret this chart? Okay. So economics is dark blue, between the age of 35 and 50. Okay. It was around 40 to 45. That is true. Very few economics published their prize before 30 and after 60. That is fair. Now, physicists tend to publish at a broader age range compared to economics. The age range of 35, 40, and 55, 50, 55 show relatively higher percentage winners in physics. Unlike in economics, there's still a notable percentage of physicists who publish their winning papers after 60. So that is also fair. Okay. And this is essentially a great example of leveraging GPT for data use cases such as data storytelling or interpreting data visualizations. And I do anticipate that a lot of future business intelligence tools will have this baked in directly. Now, what's interesting is this is I think something that will be released in the next couple of weeks globally, but some people have already started seeing it, is that GPT-4 now lets you work with PDFs, data files, or any documents that you want to analyze. You just upload it and it lets you can ask questions, right? And more importantly is that you can use tools without switching. So you can now use ChatGPT to, in one go, access the browser, do advanced data analysis, access DALL-E 3. So for example, you can say, I'm writing an article. Can you generate images for the article at the same time? And it would just do all of that in one go, right? And And I think the future of interaction with these models is going to be multimodal, where you show an image, it gives you an interpretation, it creates an image, you ask it questions, etc. And that's, I think, is going to be very exciting for the future. Now, we're going to move to Q&A, but I want to end with some closing notes, because I think, with the rise of generative AI tools comes a lot of worry and anxiety about what the future means, right? So we've had, early in the year, I'm going to take off my wizard hat, put on a more serious note. We've had, numerous calls to pause, AI experimentation, the need to pause AI development, the need to stop open source AI, for example. And there's a lot of alarm and anxiety around generative AI, right? Rightfully so. Rightfully so. And there's this vision that's being painted right now of, will there be will the future of AI be that of a doomer perspective, right, where we see kind of this Terminator scenario of AI ending the world, or will we have a very collaborative relationship with generative AI? Now, I'm much more of an optimist, and I see that there's research plus reason to believe why it's going to be the right image that's going to most likely prevail and not the left one. But what I want to cover is like the real short-term risks of generative AI, right? I think, especially right now we see this. There's so many conflicts in the world. The fog of war is a very fertile environment for scalable misinformation, AI-generated imagery, AI-generated AI-generated news, etc. And there's a real risk with scalable misinformation with generative AI, and that's something that we need to inoculate ourselves by becoming more AI literate in general. Second thing is scalable bias perpetuation, right? So this is an early version of ChatGPT. If you write this now into ChatGPT, you won't be able to do this, right? Because reinforcement learning from human feedback. But if you asked it back in the day to write a Python function to predict seniority based on race and gender, well, you can predict what the answer would have been there, right? If you're a man and white, you're super senior. If you're a man and woman, you're less senior, so on and so forth. There's also scalable risks for cybersecurity, right? Risks and threats here, right? So, what will happen in a world where all of the kind of Nigerian prince emails that you receive are actually very high quality and tailored to you, right? Oh, I saw on Facebook or like I saw on Twitter that your friend by X did this, etc. Can you give me your password so I can, right? What will happen then if these emails are highly tailored to you, right? So what's really important kind of to succeed in this time of innovation is embrace change, use it to your advantage, be aware of the real risks, and become very engaged digital citizens. And tools like ChatGPT and generative AI will can augment the roles of today, but will transform them in the future. So having that skill set and upskilling on AI is going to be foundational to be able to succeed in the new world. And with that, I'll leave you these resources that you can check out, and then we'll answer some questions. Thank you all so much for attending this code along. So this is some housekeeping. How can I get the recording? We will send it over by email, but it will also be available on YouTube as well as on LinkedIn for checking it out again. Another question here. Abdul Ali. So what are your recommendations, suggestions for cost reduction while using GPT-4? I think there's a lot of actually engineering resources here, engineering know-hows that will require you to think about how to use cost reduction. One, think about whether you need GPT-4 or GPT 3.5. That's on the model level. But two is to try to think of whether you need whether you need to stream prompts and prompt answers continuously. I've seen use cases, for example, where you need to update the output based on a prompt every month rather than all the time or whenever the user asks, for example, right? So that's one thing to think about. Okay, is there an effective way to ensure truthfulness and quality in the OpenAI API generations within the prompt itself without turning temperature down? I've heard of some people training discriminators and then running a sample of high temperature generations through it. That's a big question. So I think by leveraging something like LangChain as well, there is out of the box tooling that will help you evaluate prompts and prompt quality as well. But in terms of truthfulness, temperature is definitely a big one. And then the quality of the prompt itself. And then what you can do is battle test it on different input prompts and actually use human feedback internally within your organization to see what needs to improve there. I see some other questions here, primarily related to the. Okay, there's a question. Can we create training videos with ChatGPT, and what possibly of duplication of content? You can definitely create the scripts. You can even create the storyboard, but I don't think you can create videos with ChatGPT. And what is the possibility of duplication of content? I would say depending on the area that you are in, but that's about it. One last question here I'm going to take because I know I'm over time and I want to make sure that I'm honoring your guys' time. How is Bing different from ChatGPT 4? I think it's actually the same underlying model. It's just a Bingy user experience. With that said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap it up today. I wanted to say a huge thank you to everyone who attended today's Code Along. It's really an honor, a privilege to be able to do these sessions with you guys. Now, what I want to really caveat again, tomorrow we have an advanced prompt engineering session with Isabella Badea. And Thursday, we have an advanced data analysis session with Richie, who'll be showcasing ChatGPT to perform an A to Z data analysis workflow. And that's actually one of the killer apps of ChatGPT, in my opinion, for data work. It's really incredible. It takes the ability, really democratizes the ability to work with data science at scale. Now, I want to say again, a huge thank you for everyone who attended today's Code Along. If you have any questions, if there's any additional comments, do feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm always available. And have a